Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Resilience Reflex Show. I'm your host, Zaheen Nanji. Today, we have a great guest with us, Payne, who is a musician, author, speaker, a yoga instructor. Boy, he wears a lot of hats. And I love guests like that because they have so much to offer us. So I invite you again to join our Google Plus community, which is right up here. And when you do that, you get lots of tips from us, as well as you get a 4 video series on resilient health, which I'm going to show you right here. Okay. And at the same time, I've just created a 6-part audio series on thriving in the midst of change. And you get that when you go to my website at zaheennanji.com. Again, that's zaheennanji.com. So this is episode number 8. Wow, where has the time gone by? I started this a while back, and it's already episode number 8. And if you haven't watched the last 7 episodes, please go on my website, click on the Resilience Reflex Show, and watch the other 7 episodes. I will tell you that you'll make it a habit because you'll have a lot of stories to listen to. Hey, you may even want to make it a marathon. You never know. All right, and it's only half an hour each. Okay, so without further ado, because this is only a 30-minute show, I do want to get the most out of our guest who has amazing advice for all of us. But I want to introduce him first. Payne is an international speaker, international best-selling author of The Road to Resiliency, and the music frontman for the band Aside from Sorrow. He's also, like I mentioned before, a yoga instructor, a retreat host, yum, I love those, and a Reiki Master. Troy started his career as a youth and family counselor with the intention of helping individuals overcome adversity and find resilience. I also wanted to add something that I found on his website, which I thought was pretty interesting, where in 2004, he launched Wellness Realization, and that's when he also began to speak professionally. He wanted to create a rock concert, which I mentioned before was Aside from Sorrow is the band. But what he did was he put a message out for youth. So he recruited 3 high school musicians and formed that band. And now 2 albums later, their music is being featured in film and TV. Wow, that's amazing. I do want to add, I know that the video is lagging a little, and I apologize about the internet connection, but hey, being in a small town, that's what happens. So all you have to do is maybe cook something and you listen to us. Okay, that's all I can tell you. But watch us and welcome again to the show. So Troy, welcome. And I'm so happy that you're here. And a lot of people can see your name, but I also want to let them read your website there, which is wellnessrealization.net. Again, that's wellnessrealization.net. So Troy, you've had quite the story, hey?
Yeah, we've all had quite the story, and mine was quite unique and interesting in how it led me to where I am today.
So share with us your book, which I love the title, The Road to Resiliency. And I believe that the journey never ends. You're always learning something about yourself to become more and more maybe resilient, or to learn more about yourself on how you are becoming, or how you are learning things about yourself on overcoming adversity. So tell us about your story on how you overcame a childhood of abuse and addictions.
Yes, the book is The Road to Resiliency, and it's a book about my own life story, my own journey, which began right at birth. I was given up for adoption, and I was placed into an orphanage where I stayed for the first 11 months of my life. I was adopted by a young couple in a small town in rural Alberta. But they just weren't able to get their relationship to work out. And by the time I was 4 years old, my parents had divorced. My adopted mother assumed custody of me, and she quickly entered into a new relationship with a man who was an alcoholic, and a man who physically and mentally abused me for my entire childhood. He would do terrible and horrific things, from name calling and belittling to whipping me with a big black leather belt and lifting me up by my throat and smashing my head into kitchen cupboards. I still got to see my adopted dad, but only every second weekend. And that was kind of my, it's kind of my serenity during those first 12 years of my life. By the time I was 12 years old, I was able to escape one house of abuse because I went to go live with my adopted father. But my adopted father was a single parent. He worked 2 jobs, and he just didn't have the skills of raising a now 13-year-old boy. And he became quite angry with life, and I found myself in another abusive relationship. So I endured physical abuse with him until I was 14 years old, where I was finally, I'd finally fought back, got kicked out of the house, and then entered the foster care system. Now, as you can imagine, a 14-year-old boy who's gone through all of that is, I was sad and I was scared and I was angry and frustrated. So I was getting into all sorts of self-destructive behavior, staying out late, getting in trouble with the law, experimenting with drugs and alcohol. And most of the foster parents that I would be with, they just didn't want to deal with that. It was just too much. It was overwhelming. So I went from foster home to foster home until finally, by the time I was 16 years old, I was living on my own. And it was during that time that I had started my own cycles of addictions. I was using drugs on a regular basis and using alcohol on a regular basis, trying to numb this pain that was in me. And by the time I was 18 years old, it just wasn't looking good. I wasn't going to graduate from high school. I was really close to ending up in jail. And I had like this moment of reflection, this opportunity to look at my life. And while I was having that moment of reflection, I realized that the path that I was on was the very same path that the people who had hurt me the most, who had abused me the most, it was a path that they were on. And it was a path that I didn't want to be on. Wow.
So was that the turning point then in your life, was when you had the reflection?
It was a combination of not going to graduate from high school, of almost ending up in jail, and that realization of not wanting to repeat those cycles of abuse and addictions.
Wow. So according to your book, you mentioned how you go through the factors of and how you help youth and children. Can you share some of those with us?
Yeah. Well, the first thing that I do, I've told my story through my book and on stage in a presentation that I've created called The Road to Resiliency. I've been speaking to junior high and high school students for the last 10 years. And I use my story to kind of set the tone of what resiliency is. And as you're well aware, Zaheen, resilience is the ability to overcome or even be transformed by the adversities that we face. And after I finished telling my story, I quickly explained to them that, my story is no more significant and no more important than any of their stories, because we all have a story to tell. Adversity affects us all. It discriminates against no one. And it doesn't matter if we're the richest person in our community or the poorest person in our community. We're all faced with some sort of challenges. So the significance isn't really in our stories, even though all of our stories are important. The significance is, what do we do now with those stories? So I begin to explore with the audiences and in my book some of the experiences or choices that I made to become more resilient. And the first one is actually choice. It's choosing, it's making that conscious choice that I'm going to break these cycles of abuse or addictions or whatever it is that your story includes. Because when we talk about abuse, whether it's physical abuse, mental abuse, sexual abuse, there are these cycles that continue from generation to generation. And in the social work world, it's really hard to find accurate statistics because most childhood and domestic violence goes unreported. But from the research that I've looked at, psychologists and psychiatrists believe that you have an 80% chance of repeating those cycles of abuse if you don't go out and get some help for yourself. So making the choice is the first step, that I'm choosing a different path for myself.
Now, do you find, and I'm sure that you may go through this after, that when you did make a choice at that point of your life where you say, you know, I'm doing the same things that the other people in my life are doing. What do you tell people who make the choice but then slide back? And we've seen that over and over again too. What would you tell people like that? That is it okay? Is it feedback? It doesn't mean that it's, you know, failure? What can we tell people that makes them think that they're not a failure if they slide back? Because that's my belief when it comes to that yeah, we slide back, but something made us go there.
That's a great question. I think what I would tell people who are sliding back is to be gentle with themselves, to appreciate that, you know, we have these, we've been ingrained with reacting a certain way to the world. And it's like building a new muscle. It's going to take repetition, and it's going to take kind of that constant motivation and inspiration to keep moving forward. So even though we might slide back a little bit, it doesn't mean that we've fallen off the path. It means that we need to come back to the choice.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, Troy. You know, whether it's a life struggle, or it's a weight struggle, or it's a work struggle, I find that we have so many choices, and there are some who make the same choice every day, you know, in and out, instead of just stopping and becoming aware of what am I doing, like the way you did, you know. Whereas there are some people who make the choice and are so like, they just go, and they make that change. But yet there are some, like the way you said, who have to build that muscle. And I like that example where it's like going to the gym, you know. When we go to the gym, there are, you know, some of us who just go, right? And get to our goal and keep on going because we feel so good about it. But then there's some of us who get to the goal, but then slide back to our old habits. And that's when you really need to build that muscle and say, hey, you got so far, keep on going, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think the next step, and what I talk about in the book, is we also need to take a moment and find people in our lives who we can share our story with. You know, it doesn't matter how strong we think we might be in these lives. We need people who will love us and support us and encourage us and share wisdom with us. And I think that's a really important part of being resilient, is finding other people who can support us on these paths. And they're there. You know, I know a lot of people think that they don't have anyone in their lives, but I always encourage them to look around your community. You know, the resources are there. Look around your school. The resources are there. Even look within your extended family. You know, maybe you have a grandparent or an aunt or an uncle or somebody who can support you. Right.
Now, is your book more kind of geared towards the youth because of what you went through, Troy?
No,
or is
I
it
don't.
For everyone?
Yeah, I don't believe that it is. I mean, it's used in high schools as a book study project, but it's really a story for all of us, because it doesn't matter if you're a 14-year-old child going through this pain right now, or if you're a 36-year-old woman who had a childhood full of adversity, or even an adulthood full of adversity. It's really it's for all of us.
That's nice. So what other steps do you have in there? I would love to hear them all, actually.
Yeah, there's two more steps that I focus on. The next one, after we've made the choice that we're going to overcome our adversity, we've identified and connected with some supports. The next one is to identify the world we live in. And I always use a quote from Albert Einstein to describe this. And Albert Einstein, most of us know as a brilliant scientist, but he said that the most important question that we can ask ourselves is, do I live in a friendly or a hostile environment? And I always invite people to just reflect on that question for a moment. And when I'm on stage in front of an audience, I ask them to do a show of hands. How many people think they live in a world that's a hard place? You know, there's lots of challenges. It's a constant struggle. You can never seem to get ahead. And over 60% of the hands will usually go up, that people see the world as a hard place. Albert Einstein went on to say, no matter what your answer is to that question, whether you see the world as a hard place or a friendly place, you are right. You know, so what he's telling us is that we all have this power within ourselves. If we see the world as a hard place, then what we're really telling the universe is, you know, give me more of these painful experiences. And that's how it works. But if we can start to create these little shifts in ourselves and, you know, find even small things in life to be grateful for, like the sun shining on your face, or hearing your favorite song on the radio, or spending time with your best friend, then what we create is more things to be grateful for, or we open our eyes to really seeing the beauty that's in this world.
So what you're saying is that to change that mindset from seeing the world as a hard place is to start looking at the little things first and just starting to be grateful, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. When I was a little boy going through all that abuse, I used to lay in my bed at night crying, and I'd stare up at the ceiling and I'd ask God, why is this happening to me? And I would create these fantasies of a life full of love and without abuse. And now, almost 30 years later, I'm living that life, and it's even more beautiful and more spectacular than the imagination of the 11-year-old boy on the bed. Because when I started creating the shift in how I saw the world, I just continued to attract more people and more experiences into my life that were beautiful and loving.
That's amazing. Amazing story. And just to go through what you did, I can't imagine that. But I love your story. I love how you reflected at that point in your life and made a change for yourself. And so I just want you to repeat the 4 steps again. So the first one is choice.
Yes. The second one is identifying and connecting with supports. And the third one is identifying the world that we live in as a friendly place. The last one is forgiveness. And yes. This is the biggest one. This is where the most energy went into my book, because I believe it was the most valuable experience that I've had in this lifetime. Those of us who have endured painful adversities, especially those that were inflicted by someone else, we create these walls around us, and those walls are there to serve us, to protect us from the adversity that we know is coming right around the corner. And for a lot of us, it works really well until it doesn't anymore, until you're not able to create the life that you truly desire. You're not able to attract the love that you truly desire, or the peace that you truly desire. And to get that, we have to be willing to break down those walls. To do that, we have to come to this place in our hearts where we're willing and ready to let go of those old stories,
Hmm.
Mhm.
And you have steps in your book that show people how to do that, or you have some kind of exercises in there?
Yeah, I do. I do have some steps and some exercises, and I tell the story of how I went back almost 30 years later and had an experience with my stepfather, the man who had abused me the most in my life, and how I looked him in the eyes and I told him that I forgave him for all
Mm.
of that stuff that happened between he and I when I was a child.
Wow.
And I go on to just talk about how powerful that experience was and how that really created a significant shift in my path. When I was able to let go of my old story, then I was finally able to move forward and create a new story.
Mm. That in itself is amazing, of how you had the courage to look him in the eye, correct?
Yes.
And to say, hey, I forgive you. Because there's so many people that are filled with hatred, I find, that they cannot move on. And listening to your story, they need to understand it's important, not and it's not about them. In the end, it's about you. You want to forgive them so you can move on.
Yeah, absolutely. When I forgave my stepfather, he denied the abuse, which in the moment I was so in shock. But I realized exactly what you just said. I realized I wasn't forgiving him for him. I was doing it for me.
Wow. Okay, so this is so powerful. Oh, I'm just loving all your stories and
Mhm.
your steps. So let's go to the next thing, which is your music. How have you been using music to teach resilience to high school students? And how
Mhm.
has that shaped them too? This is what I want to know.
Yes, it was such a beautiful experience. You know, when I released my book, The Road to Resiliency, it became an international bestseller. I had a very successful stage presentation, and I came to a point where I was trying to find what's the next experience that I want to have. And for me, music has been such a healing tool for me. As a child, it was a way for me to escape out of the abusive environment. And so I became a musician, and I wanted to find a way of incorporating music into my message. So basically what I did is I took my stage show, The Road to Resiliency. I recruited 3 high school musicians, as you mentioned in the beginning, and we formed a band called Aside from Sorrow. We started practicing in the garage, learning other people's songs that we thought would be a good fit for the Road to Resiliency show. We called it the Rock and Resiliency Project. And we
Mm.
toured across Western Canada, going to high schools in front of thousands and thousands of high school students, where I would tell the story that I just told you now. And throughout it, the band and I would play songs and made it this rock concert with a message.
Wow.
About a year into the journey, the boys in the band said, you know what, Troy, we don't want to be a cover band. We want to write our own stuff. So I was inspired by their inspiration, and we started writing an album. Our first album was called Out of the Darkness and Into the Light.
Oh, there you go. Okay, perfect. Yeah.
It's the soundtrack to The Road to Resiliency. So this is a rock music album, but the songs, the beginning of the album, the songs are kind of dark and scary because they're songs about our fears and our frustrations and our adversities. But as the album moves on, the songs transition into songs about finding hope and peace in our lives. And at the very end of the album, the last song is called Life is Good. And it's this celebration of these beautiful lives that we live.
Oh, that's amazing. And I love the title, out of the darkness into the light, is it?
Yes, yes, correct.
Okay, wonderful. I don't know if you've heard about another singer, Emmanuel Jal. He used to be a former child soldier in Sudan. He's now in Ontario. And I heard him on the CBC radio with his story of how at the age of 7, he was asked, he was taught to carry an AK-47. And he now is the biggest hip hop artist in his own country, like in Sudan, even though he's in Canada. And his story is also just brutal of how he had to escape and move on. Anyways, what I'm trying to tell you is that his, like, phrase or his, message is similar to yours, which is shine bright where there's darkness, or shine bright light where there's darkness. And it's so funny that it's so similar, and you're both musicians. I just had to bring that up.
Yeah, no, thank you for sharing.
So you have to look him up.
Yes,
Emmanuel. Okay, so now I want to know how you are using your yoga and the retreats that you do to help adults heal their stories.
So 2 years ago, again, I was looking for what's the next experience that I want to have. And I knew that I was still passionate about speaking to teenagers, but I wanted to work with adults who are moving through these similar stories. So I started hosting retreats. They're 3-day all-inclusive retreats where people come and we create an environment where they get to look at their stories and the parts of their stories that they're ready to let go of. And so we start our days off with doing some gentle yoga classes, no yoga experience is required. And we do some guided meditations, and then we do some teachings around releasing our stories. There's some beautiful exercises, wonderful organic food, and at the end of the retreat, we actually have a ceremony where we burn our stories and make this declaration that, okay, I'm releasing this to the universe.
Yes, that sounds very, very powerful. And can you believe that we're almost at the end of time here? But I do wanted to ask you, yeah, we're having fun. I did want you to share where the viewers can find your book and your CD.
So all of our music, we have 2 albums that are on iTunes, or you can go to the website, wellnessrealization.net, and you can order both the CDs and the books. And we also have these beautiful Wellness Realization t-shirts. You probably can't see those very good, but
very good.
Yeah, everything is on the website, wellnessrealization.net.
Awesome. Well, so I just wanted to thank the viewers again for coming on and watching this. Make sure, please, that you go on to Troy's website, wellnessrealization.net, and check out his videos. I was really impressed with what he had to share with the audience when he speaks, and even his retreats. So our next episode, which is number 9, will be aired on July 26th, which is the last Sunday of the month. As you know, I only air them the first and last Sunday of the month. And the first Sunday, I decided not to do it in July because I want to celebrate. You know why? Because I finished my manuscript. Woohoo! I will be done July 5th, and I want to go celebrate. And that's the first Sunday of the month. So I'm not going to have a show. So that kind of tells you that, hey, you need to balance too, okay? You can't just go either. You need to balance. So July 26th, I will have a coach and speaker, Abe Brown from Calgary. He is also one of my mentors, and he'll be speaking about coming out of fear. And you will learn a lot about him then too. Troy, again, thank you so much for coming on. And I wish you all the best with your retreats, with your albums, and continue on shining.
Thank you so much, Zaheen.
Okay, thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.